AITA for dropping my girlfriend from my insurance after her affair left her injured? The day I discovered my girlfriend's betrayal, she was in the emergency room with a piece of metal lodged in her eye. And believe me, that wasn't even the most shocking part. I'm being called a villain, cruel, for ruining a young woman's life. But I disagree. Everything that happened is entirely her fault. And if anyone should take responsibility for the loss of her eye, it's her lover, not me. Vanessa and I had been together for about 5 years before we moved in together. She wanted to leave her parents' house, and I had a 2-bedroom apartment with plenty of space. So, she came to live with me. We spent 3 years splitting expenses, cooking together, and planning a future. It wasn't a perfect relationship, but it was stable, quiet, built on routines that seemed permanent. I had a good job at an engineering firm in the city. Through experience, I had learned never to blindly trust the healthcare system. My mother had suffered for months due to absurd delays and denials from her HMO, and I had sworn I would never let something like that affect my family again. So, when I got my job, I opted for the best private health insurance plan they offered. It was expensive, yes, but it was a top-tier PPO with excellent coverage for emergencies, regular checkups, and priority access to specialists. Out of affection, or maybe a sense of duty, I also added Vanessa to my plan as my domestic partner. She was a charming woman. She had this calm, gentle way of speaking that could dispel any irritation. And she was beautiful, and she knew it. What she was most proud of were her very light blue eyes, the kind that seemed to change color with the light. She always wore makeup to accentuate them, and when she looked at me in that certain way, it felt like the rest of the world disappeared. I loved walking by her side and noticing how others would turn to look at her. In those moments, she would take my arm and smile, as if to remind the world that she was mine. I never doubted her. I wasn't the jealous type. Vanessa had always shown me loyalty. At parties or gatherings, she would stay close to me. She said she didn't like to be left alone because some men got too pushy, and I found it almost cute. In her group of friends, Celine was her confidant. Sometimes we would go out with them, and I liked them. They were normal, hardworking women, drama-free. Nothing gave me any reason to be suspicious. So, when Vanessa told me one afternoon that she was going to a birthday party at the co-working space where she was helping with preparations, I didn't find anything suspicious. I had a lot of work that evening. We were finishing a major project, and I wanted to get ahead on some reports. Besides, I had already been to several of her friends' birthday parties. I didn't feel like spending hours listening to the same conversations. Vanessa got ready, put on perfume, kissed me, and told me she would be home late. After she left, I ordered some takeout and settled into my home office to work. Time passed without me noticing. I was focused on reviewing blueprints and calculations. When the phone rang, I thought it was her calling to say she was on her way home, but when I looked at the screen, I saw Celine's name. I answered automatically. Her voice was trembling, almost broken. She told me there had been an accident and Vanessa was at the hospital. As soon as I heard that, the pen dropped from my hand. I asked for the name of the hospital and ran out the door. I drove without thinking, my heart pounding in my chest. I got there in less than 15 minutes. Celine was waiting for me at the front desk, looking nervous. The moment I saw her, I asked her to take me to Vanessa. The emergency department was nearly empty, just the sound of hurried footsteps and the distant beeping of monitors. Celine said nothing, and I couldn't bring myself to speak either. A doctor intercepted me, asked for my name, and when I gave it, he nodded. "She asked to see you," he said softly. He let me in, but warned it could only be for a minute. I wasn't prepared for what I saw. Vanessa was lying on a gurney, covered up to her chest. Her head was bandaged, and some kind of plastic brace surrounded part of her face. On the right side, sticking out between the bandage and the brace, was a thin piece of metal, like a twisted rod emerging from near her eye. It wasn't large, but just seeing it was enough to send an icy chill down my spine. The rest of her face was stained with dried blood, with small cuts on her forehead and cheek. She tried to move when she saw me. She managed to say my name, but the pain made her groan. The doctor told her not to move. I moved a little closer, unsure if I could touch her. I took her cold left hand and managed to say only one thing, that everything would be okay, even though I didn't really believe it myself. The doctor asked me to step out. He needed to stabilize her. I obeyed, dazed. In the hallway, Celine was waiting, her eyes fixed on the floor. Anger began to boil inside me. What the hell happened? I demanded. She didn't answer. She took a step back. Celine, tell me what they did to her. What happened at that party? I repeated, my voice louder. She opened her mouth several times without making a sound. Her eyes were wide, her hands shaking. She tried to say it was all a misunderstanding, that she didn't understand how it could have ended like this. She told me she had already called Vanessa's mother, who was on her way, but she wasn't answering what I really wanted to know. I moved closer. Please, just talk. I need to know what happened. No one will blame you if it was an accident, I assured her. But in truth, what I felt was an icy fire of contained fury. Finally, she burst into tears. Her voice came out in fits and starts. We were celebrating, everything was fine. They were laughing, dancing. When she got to the part about the cake, she paused for a long time, as if gathering the courage to continue. Vanessa wanted to play a joke, she said. I stopped, waiting for more details. She tried to push my face into the cake, you know, that kind of joke, but I moved out of the way without thinking. She tripped and fell head first. I asked her to be more specific. Celine took a deep breath, looking at the emergency room door. The cake had metal supports inside to hold up the top decorations. It was wire. When Vanessa fell, one of them went into her eye, she concluded, covering her face with her hands. I stood motionless for a few seconds, processing what I had just heard. I couldn't believe it. It felt like all the air had been sucked out of the hallway. Then the anger hit me full force. And what kind of idiot buys a cake like that? What kind of baker sticks metal in a cake? I yelled. Celine took a step back. It was an accident, I swear. Nobody wanted this to happen, she sobbed. But something didn't add up. And how exactly did she fall? I said. Nobody gets a piece of metal stuck in their eye just by tripping. You pushed her. You made her fall, and now you're trying to cover your guilt. She shook her head relentlessly, crying uncontrollably. I wasn't thinking straight anymore. Overwhelmed by fear and anger, I lost my cool. I grabbed her by the shoulders and forced her to look at me. If Vanessa loses her eye, I will sue you, I said, my voice trembling. I'm not letting this go. She started crying even harder, saying she was sorry, that she didn't really understand how it had all happened. Completely beside myself, I kept pressing her, demanding details. But when she said between sobs that she never imagined a friend's birthday would end like this, my whole body froze. What do you mean, a friend's birthday? I asked slowly. It wasn't your birthday? Celine looked at me. Her face shifted from fear to blatant guilt. I saw it. I clearly saw the moment the lie crumbled in her expression. I didn't mean that. I'm confused. That's when I started paying attention to the details. If they were supposedly celebrating Celine's birthday, why was no one else at the hospital? No friends in the waiting room. No one asking about Vanessa. No one crying. Nothing. Just Celine, alone and perfectly clean. Her clothes were impeccable. Not a speck of cake. Not a drop of blood. No sign that she had been running through a chaotic party. Not even smudged makeup. She looked like someone who had been quietly at home and had suddenly decided to show up here. Celine, I said, staring her straight in the eye. Tell me, when is your birthday? She hesitated, and that hesitation was enough. I didn't wait for an answer. I tightened my grip on her arms. Say it. When is your damn birthday? The answer took a while to come out, but when it finally did, everything fell apart. Her birthday was almost 2 months away. I felt a knot in my stomach, as if someone were twisting it from the inside. My blood boiled. I grabbed her arms again, this time not out of blind rage, but out of desperation. I want you to tell me exactly what happened, and if you lie, you will regret it. Celine completely broke down. She said that, in reality, she didn't know all the details because she was at home when she got a call from Vanessa asking her to go to the hospital and say they had spent the day together celebrating Celine's birthday. That she had to repeat that story if anyone asked, especially me. None of it made sense. Are you telling me that Vanessa, with a piece of wire stuck in her eye, called you to ask you to lie? Who brought her to the hospital? Celine, enough with the lies. I commanded. Finally, she started telling the truth. She said Vanessa had been seeing another man for a while, someone she called Mason, and that day, she hadn't gone to see friends. She had gone to his place to celebrate his birthday. Vanessa, according to her, had explained everything to Celine and a few friends so that if I asked any questions, they would all tell the same story, that it was Celine's birthday, they were all together, and it was just a joke gone wrong. A complete script, prepared in advance. Celine hadn't been at any party. She was relaxing at home when she got a call from Mason. He had asked her to come to the hospital immediately because there had been a serious accident, that Vanessa was calling me, and they needed someone to present themselves as the event organizer and claim it was all a mistake. He said Celine had to take the blame, or the whole truth would come out. When she got to the hospital, Mason explained what had happened. They were celebrating. Vanessa had tried to lightly push Mason's head toward the cake as a birthday joke, and he, not knowing the cake had internal metal structures to support the decoration, had moved away and pushed her back directly into the center of the cake. Vanessa had impaled her eye on one of the supports. She started screaming, bleeding. Mason didn't know what to do and had taken her to the hospital. I sank into one of the hallway chairs. I felt empty, breathless. I couldn't understand what was happening. I looked down and noticed Vanessa's purse and jacket were right next to me. Without thinking, I opened the purse. I took out her phone. I had never thought it would be necessary to hide anything. I turned on the phone and started looking. It took less than 2 minutes to find a conversation with Mason. The last messages were from her, saying she was already on her way to his apartment. I scrolled up through the conversation to the previous month and found everything. Vanessa had never been shy, but she had also never been the type to send intimate photos. We had never seen the point. But with him, with Mason, there were photos, dozens of them, some taken in my own apartment, in my shower, naked in my bed, even a naked selfie of her with me sleeping in the background. There were videos too, some clearly filmed in Mason's apartment, others more explicit in places I recognized immediately. It hurt, not just because of the betrayal, but because of the planning, the consistency, the sheer nerve. I kept reading the messages. I saw how they planned their meetups, how she made up excuses to go see him, how she requested time off work, how she lied to my face while telling him she missed him. I saw photos of her with what looked like Mason's family. Everyone smiling, as if they were an official, happy couple. I couldn't take it anymore. I felt something inside me break. I stood up, the phone still in my hand. I sent myself screenshots of everything, every image, every text. Then I walked out of there without looking back. Celine ran after me. She asked where I was going. Home, I replied without stopping. And tell your friend it's over. Celine stood at the entrance, yelling that I couldn't leave Vanessa alone, that she was in serious condition, that she needed support. Then she should call Mason, I answered without turning around. If he loved her as much as his messages suggested, he would never have left her alone at the hospital. I kept walking to the car, but just as I was about to get in, I heard my name in the distance. I turned around in disgust and saw Vanessa's mother running toward me, looking frantic. She reached me, out of breath. What happened? She asked. I had no patience or compassion left. Vanessa cheated on me, I said coldly. Her lover smashed her head into a cake full of metal. Now she's in the emergency room. I didn't wait for her reaction. I turned and opened the car door. She shouted my name a few more times, then rushed inside the hospital. I sat there without starting the engine. I watched people coming and going. No one knew what had happened. No one had any idea what was unfolding behind those walls. And then it hit me. I was about to pay for expensive, specialized medical care that she would receive thanks to my money, my insurance. And that wasn't right. I picked up my phone, called the insurance company's 24-hour helpline, and requested to have Vanessa removed from my policy. I said we were no longer in a domestic partnership, that the relationship was over, and that I would not authorize any further medical expenses in her name. Since the policy was under my name, the process was immediate. Then, I drove to my apartment. I tried to get back to work, but it was impossible. My mind was a mess. I received several calls from Vanessa's mother, but I didn't answer. Instead, I started gathering Vanessa's belongings. We were no longer a couple. She had no business being in my space anymore. I collected everything: clothes, personal items, documents, books, even her things from the bathroom. I left it all in a heap in the living room. The next day, I would take it all to her parents' house. That night, tired of getting notifications, I turned off my phone. I didn't want to know anything else. I went to bed, and, for the first time in years, I slept completely alone, with the door closed. The next morning, before heading to work, I decided to stop by Vanessa's parents' house. When I arrived, no one was there. I assumed they were still at the hospital or hadn't come home from the night before. I left Vanessa's things on their back porch because I knew where they kept a spare key and I didn't want to go inside without permission. I felt a strange sense of relief as I dropped those bags there, as if I were removing something from my life that no longer belonged. Then, I tried to focus on work, though I could barely look at the screen without replaying everything in my head. In the afternoon, I had to turn on my phone to deal with a work issue, and almost immediately, it started ringing. It was Vanessa's number. I hesitated, but I answered. What I heard surprised me more than I would have thought. It was her. "My love, where are you? Why did you leave me here alone? I need you. Please, come back," she said in a strange voice, somewhere between crying and pain. I didn't respond. I just stayed silent. Then I heard a weird whimper. I guess it was from the pain in her right eye. It sounded weak, as if she were speaking with half of her face numb. "I know what I did was wrong," she continued. "But it was a mistake, just a mistake. I need you. Don't leave me now that I'm like this. I know you love me, and I know we can get through this. I'm begging you, don't leave me alone in here." It disgusted me to hear her talk like that, as if nothing had happened, as if I hadn't seen her phone, the photos, the videos with that guy. "So," I replied bluntly, "I saw everything on your phone, Vanessa. Don't come to me with stories. You even met your lover's family. Forget about me. Call him." She made that strange noise again, a mix of pain and crying. In the background, I heard an impatient sigh. It sounded like the phone was on speaker. "You have no idea how much I regret this," she said. "He meant nothing. It was just a mistake. Please, come to the hospital. They're going to operate on me tonight, and I'm scared. They said I might lose my eye, but there's still a chance. Please, I need you to be here." None of it moved me. For me, it was too late. "What you need," I replied, "is to see if you have insurance that covers your surgery, because you can't count on mine anymore." And I hung up. Not a minute passed before she called back, but I didn't answer. I didn't want to hear her. I didn't want to give any explanations. I didn't want her to try to manipulate me. I silenced my phone and went on with what I was doing, even though I couldn't concentrate. About an hour later, the messages started pouring in from everyone. Her mother, her father, even her friends. All of them were telling me to call the hospital, to sort out the insurance issue, that I was the only one who could help. Celine even sent a voice message saying the surgery couldn't be done because the insurance had refused to pay, that the hospital said they wouldn't touch her without authorization, and that the operation cost a fortune, in her words. I replied only, "Not my problem." I ignored the rest. That evening, Vanessa's father showed up at my apartment. He knocked several times until I opened the door. I didn't let him in. I stood in the doorway, ready in case he lost his temper, although he didn't seem like that kind of man. "Listen, son," he said. "I understand that you're hurt. I understand you feel betrayed, and I assure you I'm not justifying what my daughter did. But she needs this surgery. She could lose her eye if she doesn't get it now. It's just a matter of time. We have no way of coming up with over $100,000. But if your insurance covers it, I swear we'll pay you back afterward." I didn't believe him for a second. I knew that even with good intentions, he could never pay for a surgery of that magnitude. Besides, in my mind, there was no longer any we. Vanessa and I were over. "Vanessa and I have no connection anymore," I replied. Before, I might have felt sorry for what happened to her, but now, I'm not going to take on debts or problems that aren't mine. Stop calling me and insisting. She made the choice to cut me out of her life a long time ago. Let her deal with the consequences. His expression changed. Not to anger, but to resignation. He just nodded, took a step back, and left without another word. A few days later, it was Celine who told me what happened next. I don't know if it was out of guilt or because she thought I wanted to know, but she would text me from time to time, always to report some new disaster in the chaos that everything had become. According to her, Vanessa's parents had tried to find the money every way they could. Family, loans, a GoFundMe, even trying to take out a second mortgage. Nothing had worked. The amount was too high, and the hospital refused to operate without guaranteed payment. The famous Mason was nowhere to be found. No one really knew where he lived, and even those who had tried to message him never got a response. It was as if he had vanished into thin air. No visits, no calls, nothing, as if he had never existed. And that, according to Celine, had sent Vanessa into an even deeper spiral. In the end, the surgery needed to save and reconstruct her couldn't be performed. The damage was too severe, and there was no more time. To prevent worse infections and serious complications, they had to remove her right eye completely. When Celine told me, I felt nothing, neither satisfaction nor sadness. Just a strange emptiness, as if I were reading a new story about someone I had never known. But it wasn't over. Since there was no money for a custom prosthesis, they had to fit her with a generic prosthetic eye, one that didn't match in color. Her left eye was a light gray. The one they put in was a dark, opaque shade, completely different. According to Celine, the contrast was immediately obvious. 2 seconds of looking at her was all it took. And for someone who had always been so proud of her eyes, that had to be torment. In the following weeks, Vanessa's friends flooded me with insulting messages. They said I was a monster, that it was my fault she lost her eye, that I had destroyed her life, that I had no heart, but none of it got to me. As I've said from the beginning, the only one responsible was Vanessa. From what Celine told me, Vanessa spent a few weeks holed up at her parents' house, refusing to see anyone. She would argue, cry, and break things. One day, according to Celine, she had such a violent fit that she started smashing all the mirrors in the house, screaming that she never wanted to see herself again. For the first month after the operation, she wore an eye patch, a kind of soft covering, to keep the light from irritating the area. Then, she started wearing sunglasses all the time, even indoors, trying to keep people from noticing her appearance. Despite that, according to Celine, people noticed anyway. One day, Celine even sent me a picture of Vanessa without the patch. I don't know if she was trying to make me feel guilty or just show me what Vanessa had become, but it didn't provoke anything in me. I do admit, though, that seeing her with that sunken, mismatched eye, knowing how proud she once was of her gray eyes, was striking. The only time I asked Celine about anything was about Vanessa's lover, Mason. I asked her if he had shown up, if he had appeared. Celine replied that Vanessa had called him several times, but that he never picked up. No one knew if it was fear, shame, or pure cowardice. But Mason had completely disappeared, and Vanessa, she said, was afraid to even leave her house, not so much because of the pain, but out of shame of being seen. That was the end of it for me. And even though many tried to make me feel guilty, I knew perfectly well that I was not. If you like the stories, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.